What is going on, everybody? Happy Friday morning. I know this week's probably felt like a month for some based on the market volatility that's going on. Look, today we're going to talk about and settle everybody down. I know there's been some negative sentiment going on right now in the cannabis space and what could happen. And, with this market crash where cannabis stocks basically sit. But two really good people on. Eric Berlin from Dentons, legal attorney, considered probably the top cannabis attorney in the U.S. when it comes to cannabis. Going to talk to us about the latest in the ALJ hearing and really paint the picture on what we can expect next, as well as we all know Trent Woloveck, fantastic guest. He's been on a number of times. He's going to give us the latest information, what he's hearing in Washington, D.C., as well some short-term catalysts for this industry, Pennsylvania, and adult use. No one knows the state better than Trent, so we'll get some aspects on that and get his feedback. So all in all, this podcast is supposed to have some transparency, understand where we are, and more importantly, just managing expectations moving forward. So with that, let's welcome in AV here on a Friday morning. Good to see you, sir. Happy to have you on. How are things?
Good. Well, excited to jump into this with Eric and get some facts
and direction
to the matter. Yeah.
So this is a fact-finding podcast. So with that, because I know we only got about 15 minutes with Eric here this morning, so let's get right to it and welcome in Eric Berlin from Dentons. Good to see you on a Friday morning. How are you, sir?
I am actually doing well, and it's nice to see both of you today. I hope you're hanging in there during these volatile times, but all is good. And thank you for having me and accommodating my schedule as well.
Well, I appreciate it. And look, it's always great to have you on. And we can always speculate on what we think or could happen with this ALJ hearing. But, the most important thing is to have people on that actually are qualified to speak on this behalf from a legal aspect. And let's tee things up. As we know, the ALJ hearing for cannabis rescheduling was initiated under the Biden administration. It was paused 90 days by Judge John Mulrooney. This was a couple days before the Trump administration entered into office. Since then, as we know, radio science, so lots to unpack. So in your legal opinion, where does the ALJ hearing stand now? And is there any indication that it will resume, or has it effectively been shelved under this new administration? So how do we interpret this?
Yeah, happy to answer that. So let me address the hearing status. Yesterday, the DOJ submitted a joint status report. It's a joint report from the parties as required by the ALJ's January order to which you referred.
Okay.
And it said, it's a small quote I'll read, it's not much that they said, movements interlocutory appeal to the acting administrator regarding their motion to reconsider remains pending with the acting administrator. No briefing schedule has been set, which is basically there's an appeal up to the administrator or to the administrator, and nothing has happened yet. And quite frankly, that's not surprising at all.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, to me,
why is that?
I'm sorry.
Why is that not surprising, Eric, for those that don't understand?
Well, certain folks made the choice that they felt that the hearing needed to be abandoned in a sense, and made the decision to make this appeal. It's an appeal that's was going into an incoming administration, and we'll get to what their priorities are in a few minutes. But even if a DEA administrator had been put in right away, I don't think that they would have been getting to this. And that's just one of the risks that were taken by going down this path, is that basically nothing would happen for a while. And I think it was particularly set up for nothing to happen when you have a transition of administrations, with the new administration having different sets of priorities. I will say, to address one of the additional questions you asked, I believe there are options to reschedule cannabis that obviate the need for a hearing. And so there's several possibilities. One is that the administrator takes it up, denies the appeal, sends it back to the ALJ, and the hearing proceeds. But we believe under the law, there are ways for the Trump administration to be more direct and get cannabis rescheduled more directly.
Okay, that's where I wanted to get to, because, is there a chance that this hearing could be shelved permanently And if so, like, how would that work? And then to your point, I don't want to get as speculate or expectations wise, but when you say like a more direct response, meaning like, let's forget the hearing itself and go right to a ruling, is that what we're reading correctly?
Yeah, I apologize. I can't remember whether I've discussed this with you all, but what I'm saying is that there are, and I won't get too legal or use numbers or anything like that, but there's basically a provision that enables the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, and the DEA to reschedule more directly. The second thing I'd say is that it's really easy to do. I mean, the administration can, for example, um, rescind the notice of proposed rulemaking and go straight to a rule. And if that were the case, there would be no need for a hearing, so the hearing would essentially be canceled.
Okay.
That's just, I don't want to go too deep down the legal hole here, but that's just one example.
Okay. Go ahead, Anthony.
How accessible, for people that don't know, how accessible is the DEA? Like, are they completely adversarial and just walled off to anybody, let's say that's participating in this industry? Is there dialogue that can be had with them? Or are they more so from an agency perspective and a comms perspective, we'll talk to you when we absolutely have to, and it's mandated by the rules of the law?
Well, we're in a bit of a tricky situation. I mean, of course, there's access. I don't know that I'd suggest they've been the most transparent agency in the federal government historically, but I mean, there's certainly access. But we also have rules of ex parte communications when there is a matter being considered. Okay. And it's actually one of the issues that was raised by the parties that made this appeal, was that the opponents of rescheduling had improper ex parte communications with the DEA. So a little bit of the problem is that there's limits on that now. But let me answer the question more directly. For anyone who has missed it, the decisions are being made by President Trump or yes, folks close to President Trump, and I am actually. I have no reason to believe that Attorney General Pam Bondi would stand in the way of rescheduling. And if that's what President Trump wants, I don't think that the DEA administrator would stand in the way of that, because I think it's pretty clear to the folks in the administration that you're welcome to stand in the way, but you won't have your job for longer than 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm not going to get into political discourse on that, but I think that is a fair description of the reality. And so I don't mean to be dismissive of the question. I just think that, our ability to do it that way is limited. And the real person who's making decisions about most of the stuff is President Trump.
Which we continue to say. And I know a lot of people want to believe that. There's uncertainty because still we sit here today in April, which we've always outlined on this show. First 90 days, don't get your hopes up. There's bigger priorities. And one of the things that was outlined last week was the Trump administration outlined its 6 drug policy priorities for 2025, which excluded cannabis rescheduling. This could evolve. And I think a lot of people, when they first glanced at this, were just like, oh, here's another example how cannabis is not a priority and it's pushed obviously to the side. If you're sitting in front of people that follow the space, and this isn't legal advice, but, based on that story and that information that came out, what would be your response to say something like that?
Stay the course. It would be my response. And let me explain that and go back just one step. And I'll try to be quick, but may take a minute over or so. But let's remember what President Trump said on the campaign trail. He said, I'm going to quote him a few times here, "We must also implement smart regulations while providing access for adults to safe tested product." He's referring to cannabis, marijuana. He then later said, as president, and this isn't quite I think there's maybe a word missing here, but he says, as president, we will continue to focus on research to unlock the medical uses of marijuana to a Schedule III drug and work with Congress to pass common sense laws, including safe banking for state authorized companies. Then, asked about cannabis policy, the Trump transition team said that the president will, quote, implement the promises he made on the campaign trail. And then the White House has most recently spoken of this and said no action is being considered at this time. And everyone kind of freaked out by that. I think the key phrase there is at this time.
At this time. Yeah.
Right. And they're pretty precise in the language like that. Right. And so President Trump said something. His transition team said, yes, we're going to do that. And now they say, well, we're not doing that at this time. And I find that also unsurprising. Cannabis never was part of the first 100 days in office. It was never listed as a priority, even though there was clear communication as to where the president stood on it. So I'm not that worried that things haven't happened in the first 100 days.
Okay, so here's
about this. But if I may, just
finish your thought.
Yeah, I wanted to come to what you said, though, about the drug policies and make very clear to your audience that those are drug control policies.
Yes.
That's what was listed there. They are drug control policies, and it's good that cannabis was not mentioned, right? They're about how do we end addiction? How do we end the scourge of drug use in the country? And it's good that cannabis wasn't listed there. And it's arguably part of the first priority, which is to reduce the number of overdose fatalities with a focus on fentanyl. And I would, it's not a novel thought. You've heard it before, that cannabis has an effective place in that. And so I will end, and I'm happy to answer your question, but I'll end what I have to say here by saying that President Trump understands that cannabis has medical efficacy, and patients deserve the autonomy to use it. We know that he's heard that from many trusted individuals, and we know he believes it because he said it. He said, unlock the medical uses of marijuana. He's already there. He's already said that what he intends to do. And the fact that he's not doing it in the first 100 days, when he's addressing what he views as global crises.
Right.
And we can, you can get guests on who may want to take issue with that or not, but he views the U.S. as somewhat under threat due to some of the international instability and trade and other issues. And that's what he's dealing with in the first 100 days. And I know he's dealing with more than that.
Yeah.
And I know other folks will say, well, he's done this or that. I'm just talking about the cannabis issue and where his focus lies.
Here's an important question then, and that all makes sense. And I think a lot of people understand that. I think the big thing that probably is on people's mind too is that, do you feel behind the scenes, even though they're not addressing this and coming out and he wants to control the narrative, do you believe there's progress that's being made?
Well, yes.
Okay.
I mark progress perhaps differently than others, right? I mean, I mark it like, are we going directionally where we need to go? And are there individuals activated outside and in the administration to get that done? And my best understanding is that, yes, that is occurring. And so when I view that as tremendous progress, guys, I've done this for a long time, right? I've been in the cannabis industry now on the legal side for 17 years, and it's going far slower than any of us hoped. And quite frankly, slower than I had anticipated and hoped. But I also, from that perspective, understand what it takes to move the needle here. And I do believe that good things are happening to get this done. And a lot of people are working on it and taking it seriously. And, even to get the ask to the president, I think there are the right people to make that and the right people to determine when is the right time to have communications on that. And you and I, and we are all very super eager, and we'd like that to happen today. But, it's like, we all have experience of that. Like, when's the right time to ask mom and dad to do something? I mean, we've done that from being little kids, and we shouldn't necessarily judge other people as to when that decision is.
Well, the big takeaway in this interview here today is that it's a good thing that cannabis rescheduling was not on that list of drug policies, drug control, as you just indicated. And I think that's what people should really take away. Look, you said you had 15 minutes. I'm looking at this interview segment. We're at 14 minutes and 58 seconds. So we couldn't have timed it any better.
We killed it. It's great. It's great to be on. It's great to talk to you. I know these are, we wish we were making more progress.
Yeah.
And I'll say, if I were better at my job, we'd be making more progress. But, this is, I don't see failure in here. Yeah. We certainly wish that this was going more smoothly, but where things stand with rescheduling, it may be for the better. I mean, it presents the president with an opportunity to get this done in an efficient manner. Yeah. And maybe to make a deal on this, so to speak, such that it's covered and it won't be something he needs to continue dealing with throughout his administration. So I think there are opportunities, and there are, folks like me who are thinking about it that way. So I want to leave folks feeling a little better for the weekend. I'm not Pollyannish. I know there's work to be done, but hopefully that's helps people understand where we are.
Well, as we like to say, we like to set the narrative, and it's because of guests like yourselves. So I appreciate you giving the availability for Anthony and I, along with our community. But in the meantime, let's keep in touch. Thank you very much, and look forward to speaking to you soon again. Okay, Eric?
I do as well. Thank you very much. I wish I could stay on and listen to us, but I'll catch it on the recording.
All right. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Shad, you should reach out to Matt Gates. Long shot, but I wouldn't be surprised for him to come on your show. We actually have been reached out. Anthony, I know you have some contacts over there. I've yet to hear back, but that is definitely someone that we've reached out to. Might have to pull out the wallet and give him a little bit of money to come on the show, but that would be rather interesting to say the least. But big takeaway there, as I said, Anthony, as we were closing that portion, was it's a good thing that cannabis rescheduling was not part of that list last week that the Trump administration announced. But great way of looking at it, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, it's control policies, like Eric had alluded to. Like, yes, there's an illicit market in the United States right now, but if you look at the data, legalization is protracting the illicit market. Canada's proving that. I don't think cannabis in any way, shape, or form would have found its way on that list one way or another.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm not going to read that comment, but that had me going. That comment's referring Matt Gates. But anyways, yeah. Anyways, let's move now into our second segment. Let's bring on the Chief Strategy Officer of Jushi Holdings, Trent Woloveck. Excuse me. Good to see you again. How are things, sir?
Morning, gentlemen. I'm well, thanks. How about yourself?
Good. You in Augusta? Like the shirt. What a day for Mr. Justin Rose in the first round, huh?
I wish I was at Augusta. If anybody out there has tickets, I'll more than happy to buy them. But I've been unlucky thus far on the pool, on the drawings. So we'll see. Changes.
Either one of you guys been to Augusta?
I've not. It's on my bucket list of sporting events to go to.
I think that's on a lot of people's bucket list when it comes to a sporting event. But a tradition unlike any others, Jim Nance said back in 1986. But man, I didn't realize Jim Nance actually came up with that phrase. But that's the why he makes the big bucks and is a legend in broadcasting. But good to see you guys. Spring, it's all about new opportunities and hope. And I know you've been doing actually some really strong footprint groundwork, both in Virginia and in Pennsylvania, visiting a number of hemp shops and smoke shops, I should say. But real quick, just to kind of set the stage for our audience to understand what you've been up to the last couple of weeks, if not month or two. What is it you're doing around these smoke shops? What's the whole point of doing this? And what are you finding, I guess, when attending these places?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously this is, a subject that has many different veins. But I think it's important that, we continue to tell the truth around cannabis. And so, that's really my objective here, is to, continue to educate folks on what's going on in the real world, not in their little bubble, but actually what's going on out in their communities. And so, I've gone to, multiple different states where we have operations, or even where we don't have operations, to get an understanding on, what the quote unquote hemp market looks like under the loophole of the Farm Bill, namely focused around synthetic cannabinoids, which is a big concern of mine from a public health and safety perspective, but also false CFAs with THC and THCA content. Those are really, the two pieces that concern me as an operator, as somebody who consumes cannabis,
Of course.
who's been in the regulated market for 15 plus years now. People taking shortcuts and, quite frankly, ruining all the progress that everybody's made for the decades plus on getting this normalized here in the United States.
All right. So drum roll. What are you finding with some of the stuff that you're doing?
Yeah. Well, there's not much of a drum roll because I think most people already know. But, in these stores where there's no age gating, where they can pop up anywhere they want, next to a school in some cases,
Really?
next to a daycare, by a place of worship, all the places where we have, sensitive uses so that it's not exposed to, the wrong individuals.
Yeah.
That's obviously just not the case here in this situation. But I've gone in, I've bought product from flour to pre-rolls to infused products, gummies, vapes, concentrates. In Pennsylvania, I think I bought 9 different things. All 9 came back, in excess of the THC threshold and what constitutes hemp versus cannabis, based on the Farm Bill. And then in Virginia, which has a hemp kind of definition at the state level, which is 25-1 CBD to THC. No other synthetic cannabinoids or anything like that are allowed to be present. 5 out of 5 came back hot. And the scary thing is we saw HHC pop in a lot of those, which is a synthetic cannabinoid. THCP, which is another synthetic cannabinoid. I won't get into the science of it all, but we don't know what those are. We don't know what those do, quite frankly. They're not naturally occurring in the plant. And even setting that aside, all of the products, contain above 0.3% THC. And so the idea that, I bought a eighth of flour in downtown Philadelphia that, contained pretty much 10 times the legal limit of THC, and it had a good amount of THCA in it as well. The product was distributed from Florida, tested in California. Company from North Carolina. It's a lot of rigmarole, quite frankly.
So with the reconnaissance that you're doing and with these results that you're finding, what are you doing as a company, or what can we be doing as an industry to be influencing getting this out of the communities that are affected by what you're looking at? Because there are 2 markets that Jushi operates in, PA and VA, and a lot of the other MSOs are in a lot of these markets, and these are a public safety risk to their existing businesses, especially if constituents of these communities start seeing, oh, well, there's a smoke shop next to my child's school. There's a smoke shop next to my place of worship. They're seeing cannabis, and they're going to correlate that with a broad brush as to the good actors and the state regulated ones that are in there as well. So, I mean, what are we doing to combat this, or at least create public awareness around this problem?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think the industry, unfortunately, has been a little slow on reacting to this. However, in the last let's call it 9 to 18 months, this has blown up. I mean, you can see the charts in Texas and Florida and Pennsylvania where you're seeing, in Texas, there's 60,000 smoke/vape shops. 60,000. That was like 2,000 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
Florida, same type of hockey stick growth. Pennsylvania, 15,000, same type of hockey stick growth. And so this isn't by accident, quite frankly. It's very organized. And I think, we got to continue as an industry to delineate ourselves between a regulated THC product and an unregulated THC product. And so I think it's that education piece that, we've had to battle for, at least the last 10 years I've been in here educating legislators, educating, executives at the governorship level or at the White House level, regulators as well. To me, you just had Eric Berlin on, who is a great legal mind, doing a lot of work around rescheduling and safer. But, this right here is the number one reason why none of those things has happened. This is confusing folks that don't understand cannabis, legislators, regulators, executives. I mean, I've now watched Governor of Virginia veto an adult use bill 2 years in a row. He said the same exact thing 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Those same exact things were rinsed and repeated in New Mexico. And so
but within that race, I know that we're seeing Youngkin's gone in 2026. What are you seeing on the ground in Virginia right now in terms of the gubernatorial candidates that are coming into the fold and that are going to be running against each other here soon? Do you think that adult use cannabis and regulating intoxicating hemp products are going to come up within the calculus of what they're going to be debating and what they're going to be implementing in terms of policy?
Yeah, look, it's pretty clear cut on the two. The two candidates are determined. It's the current lieutenant governor, Winston Sears, and then she's a current U.S. Representative in Virginia. Her name is Abigail Spanberger. And so one person has a very clear distinction in understanding what is going on in the community, and wants to regulate, tax, and create, jobs for Virginians. That's Abigail Spanberger. And then you have, somebody that would probably be even more conservative than Governor Youngkin on this, on this stuff. And that's Winston Sears. And so, I think, we talked about this prior.
We talked about being
true. Abigail Spanberger could sleepwalk for the next 4 or 5 months because she's up 15 points and probably still win. But that's not her. She's an ex-CIA agent. And so, she's going to continue to, I think, expand that gap.
She's 45 years old and Winsom's in her 60s. And I just think it always comes down sometimes to the generational thing and how people were brought up and how they view cannabis. Brian Dombrowski actually came out and said, "Hello, hemp haters. This is a crock of whatever. And I have a foot on both sides of the fence. Clean up your own backyard." Brian, we're not hemp haters. We want a regulated market. I'll make that clear. And we say this time and time again. We're not critiquing the hemp industry and we want to crush hemp. The regulated market, all for that. And that's the message that we want to get clear. And I think people like you, Trent, and you like Anthony would back up probably that as well.
So what you just said, completely agree with. But I think we have to understand that when they're listening to what we're saying take THCA out of take THCA flower out of the market. Take synthetic cannabinoids out of the market. That's implying that we want to crush the hemp market, just to be the devil's advocate here.
No, Anthony, can I just make a point on that?
Because THCA flower is the biggest problem in the hemp market because it allows illegal cannabis to get sold through with fake COAs with like what you're saying. That's the biggest culprit.
But it's not THCA flower. It's actually THC flower.
But that's what
we've proven that time and time again. So
I understand that.
Piece. Let me be very clear. I want THC to be regulated the same across the board.
It's correct.
And so the nomenclature that I'm trying to crush an industry is just
false,
complete and utter.
Yeah, I'm not agreeing with them. I'm just stating their perspective.
Yeah, as Irish
the way that they're seeing it, because the way that I'm looking at both industries right now, if we eliminate THCA flower from the market right now, I think you're going to crush those hemp businesses because they're not going to have a business, because they're literally just selling hot flower right now. They're not truly selling THCA flower at the end of the day. Their business is gone. Do I agree with what they're doing? No. But regulating this thing to the extent that we're seeing in Missouri, Florida, Texas, you are going to crush their business. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's going to cause more people to come into regulated market. It's going to cause more people to not be subject to these bogus products. It's a net positive, but we are going to crush a lot of the operators in this industry, which I know it's illegal and I don't agree with. It's livelihood. So anybody within the hemp industry, I don't think that they're going to have any perspective other than that, that we're here to kind of shit on their shoes per se, regardless if you want to agree with it or not.
Trent is right. Hemp should have to follow the same rules as cannabis, taxes, testing, regulations, employee testing, etc. To your point, Anthony, in the perspective basically from the hemp industry, I think Texas is going too far in the opposite direction because, like you said, this could kill a lot of livelihoods. But there needs to be a common balance here because, to your point, Trent, yes, it should go through the same process as the cannabis industry right now. And I think that's what we need to figure out, right?
Yeah, like, look, if you want to follow what you're allowed to produce under the Farm Bill, which is 0.3% THC,
which is
products,
they don't. Yeah,
but they're not. Like,
I know.
That's like, I would challenge anybody to let me walk into a smoke shop in any of the 50 states across the United States. Let me pick out a product, and I will bet you 10 out of 10 times I pick something hot. Period.
From a flower standpoint.
Nah, dude, I'll pick from a flower perspective.
Yeah.
From a vape perspective.
Yeah.
From anything. I come on, like, let's call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
Let's have a real conversation about it.
Well,
I have these conversations on X all the time.
We are right now. Here's another comment.
And these people dodge the question. They dodge what the truth is. And I had to sit there and listen, to somebody from FBT earlier this week, who is on the board of U.S. Hemp Roundtable, talk about CBD and try to blame it on the FDA.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. Like,
the problem too.
Hold on, Anthony. Kush.com. There are plenty of receipts out there of showing what those people who are part of U.S. Hemp Roundtable, who sit on the board, what they do.
Well, we've got Jim Higdon on next Wednesday from Cornbread Hemp, which I was just about to say. The problem is, too, with a lot of what's going on in the hemp industry, there's good companies. The smoke shops are the problem because they're running around unregulated, getting product from God knows where, which they don't care, and just unscrupulously selling it. You've got companies like Hometown Hero and Cornbread Hemp that supply COAs, that are using organic inputs, that are using hemp-derived Delta-9 THC extracts. Delta-8, as much as I don't want to agree with it, most of the shit that they're using is clean to an extent. Those are good actors. The smoke shops, on the other hand, sell anything from Amanita and Delta-8 chocolate bars to 7-OH tabs that are being produced by the same companies like Cheech and Chong that are just Wild West. They're just drug factories that are producing anything that's legal by federal standards.
In one of the smoke shops that I was at in Virginia, Northern Virginia, 1 block away from Sam's office,
a
woman walked in right in front of me and wanted to buy mushroom caps, literally caps.
Yeah.
And so the guy's like, oh, it's going to take me a little while to go run back. And she's like, I'm in a hurry. So just give me some of this and give me a chocolate bar and, give me some of that weed right there. Like literally right in front of me. And that's when I went on to buy my cookies product that, again, tested hot, had to, I think do 4 or 5 clicks to find what was a false C of A.
Yeah.
And,
I didn't even get a COA in what I purchased. I had paperwork in there basically saying if you're a federal agent or if you're the post office and you open this, there's a COA in here that validates that it is 0.3% THC hemp material, and there was no THC or there was no COA in the box. So if someone found that in the mail, it tested hot, I'm liable. Then I got to go sue whoever I bought it for online. But I hate to say this.
Look, that's coming.
It is.
That's coming.
It is. And I hate to say this, but it really is the only way that any of this kind of makes sense. We need federal guidelines for the molecule that is THC and just one plant.
Yeah.
That is it. It's common sense. It really would be easy. And that really does need to be blamed on the FDA and the government agencies that just don't want to act. Because if they create a federal guideline on just the THC molecule, the hemp versus cannabis versus whatever the fuck we want to talk about, it's all basically fixed.
Yeah.
Brian
Dabrowski writes again, most hemp operators are self-regulating, asking for more questions. And
so they're self-regulating with themselves, but they don't really want to talk about the bad practices of the industry. Yeah, I agree with him.
But he did later say, exactly, you made a good point. Quit cherry picking the bad actors, please. We're not trying to cherry pick any bad actors.
But the problem is the bad actors that are involved in hemp, no one can make a difference with the state-run cannabis businesses. That's the problem. All of this in the person on the street's eyes, not anyone watching this show or anyone that we talk about with the industry can tell the difference. That smoke shop that's selling Amanita, 7OH, mushroom caps right next to what looks like cannabis flower, they don't tell the difference between that and True Leaf.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's why people in the cannabis industry are so against what's going on.
And Sam is 100% leveraging that message with prohibitionists. 100%. They do not distinguish between Thicker Clouds, which is in Alexandria, less than 1 mile from my regulated shop.
Correct.
And it's lumped all together. So Eric says, man, I wish we would, if I was better at my job, I could have, we would be further along. Like, I disagree. He's actually really good at his job. We have gotten meshed with the bad actors. And yes, of course there's been bad actors, as somebody who operated in Colorado in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, there were plenty of bad actors in the regulated market. I mean, I remember Sweet Leaf. I mean, they had like 15 dispensaries. They were bad actors. They were allowing people to loop through their stores, meaning they could buy an ounce every time. But guess what? That got caught. That got fixed. That got weeded out. And, my business went from $55 million to $72 million.
Yeah.
Like that, because of that. And so people are concerned about the growth of cannabis. All I have to say is there's $8 billion of stuff, intoxicating hemp, synthetic cannabinoids sold in Texas alone. $8 billion. That's what they say. Even if you think that that's high, so be it. It's still a huge number.
Yeah.
The top publicly traded MSOs sold $7.2 billion. We had 40,000 people working. The numbers are dwarfed compared to what the regulated industry is doing versus the unregulated, bad actors, organized crime, whatever you want to call it, around THCA flower, using the loophole with synthetic cannabinoids. One last thing. In 2023, and I quote 2023 because I don't know the 2024 numbers, $1 billion, $1 billion approximately was imported from China, from India, of CBD oil. All of that gets converted into, whatever it is they want to make. This nomenclature that this is American farmers. Yes, there are some. Absolutely. That's not who I'm going after. But that $1 billion turns into $10 billion, which then turns into $20 billion of sales like that.
And I could bet you for damn sure that the biomass that goes into that CBD distillate or whatever it is isn't lab tested. It sure as hell isn't coming in pure, and then it's going in as input product into all those gummies and all those products that you're seeing within the smoke shops.
We need to be a platform that basically, has a conversation, sees both sides. Brian then writes, and Sam loves you fighting for the hemp side. He may have a point there, but the more that we obviously fight, the more of a role that they have. But yeah, they are blurring some of the message right now. But I push back on Brian and say, look, we aren't hemp haters here. We want it to be a regulated market. So I then ask you that question. So you look at some of these bad actors that are painting kind of a paintbrush on the industry as a whole. So push back on you, Brian. What are some of the things that you guys think you need to change as far as your side of the equation? And I think that's a valid question because to your point, Anthony, whenever we do reach out with those types of questions, it's like radio silence. They try to deflect somewhat of the topic or the question that's being asked, but got to keep the conversation going. That's for sure. Yeah. You mentioned that Spamberger, big lead right now in Virginia. So if she were to become the 76th governor in the state of Virginia, it appears that is a good thing at all. Is there any, how does that framework work if she is elected and we could see adult use? Could anything change with the current framework? Could there be more licenses that come live? What are you seeing and hearing pertaining to that?
Yeah. And just to be clear, there's some House seats up and there's some Senate seats up as well. The Democrats have been, huge supporters of cannabis in the Commonwealth. They get what's going on. And so, I don't think the framework that was put forward this year will reflect what's going to be put forward next year. Yeah. I think there's a lot of work to be done on that front as we continue to talk with stakeholders, not just cannabis operators, but, farmers, small business owners, economically disadvantaged areas within the state. That constitutes both rural and urban, centers. And so I think we have a really good shot to, pass a commercial adult use market, next year. When's implementation? It can either be July 1st of 2026, October 1st of 2026, or 1/1 of 27. Okay. These are the three dates that, unless you put it directly into the legislation, those are the start dates that legislation can kick in the Commonwealth.
Well, another short-term catalyst is Pennsylvania, which is a little bit closer. We keep hearing some great things. I'm not sure if you get to see some of the segments we have on Mondays with Michael Bronstein from Attach, but he's talking about a lot of positive momentum that's building up in PA, and we could have some sort of feedback hopefully by the middle of this year. But one of the, concessions that's being negotiated right now is what's called skill gaming, which is online gaming. And have you heard much about what's going on in the state Senate as to how negotiations are going? And do you kind of share that same sentiment as Michael, that we are heading in the right direction to eventually get adult use passed, knowing that, let's face it, the governor has been incredible as far as advocating and backing this up, especially knowing $5 billion in tax dollars over the next 5 years in his budget, right?
Yeah. And just to be clear, skill games are pseudo slot machines that
at bars for Eagles fans.
That are, well, they're at smoke shops too. I've ran into, I was in Pittsburgh for a dinner with Senate leadership, and at noon I went to buy some name tags, and at the BP right across from the CVS, I lost $5 in a slot machine, and I bought some weed at a BP. So, that was really cool. But in all seriousness, we're having proper conversations. What is skill gaming? is there's 130 to 140,000 machines
Yeah,
in Pennsylvania right now.
will be heard.
They're untaxed and unregulated.
Okay.
Boy, that really sounds familiar to something else that
There we
we
go.
are more importantly talking about
Yeah.
on this show, adult use cannabis, because again, intoxicating hemp and synthetic cannabinoids are being sold across the Commonwealth in Pennsylvania, unregulated, untested, untaxed, quite frankly. And so it would make sense that, you know, you kind of tie those two things together. You saw Danny Laughlin come out with a memo about that. Danny Laughlin's a very important individual from a Senate perspective, Republican from Erie. He's actually the chairman of the committee that adult use bill would go through. So he's an important person to keep your eye on.
Yep.
On what he says. And I think President Pro Tem Kim Ward was just at the Pittsburgh Pirates home opener with Mark Fogel, and she posted a picture with him. You want to talk about a disappointment? Somebody that gets, popped for cannabis in a different country doesn't come back and actually talk about cannabis.
Right.
I find that quite odd. But anyways, she's with people that consume cannabis, and so, I think that's a positive step.
Yeah.
And look, linking the two together, that's 750 to $1 billion of tax annual between the two, and you can raise a lot of money off of that from a state perspective, where you're operating with a $3 billion deficit, with a 2% clip. That's that grows really quick from inflation perspective, and they only have like $8 million left in the left in the rainy day fund. So they need to find revenue.
All right, let's give Brian credit. I like his response. FDA needs to do their job and regulate this. Everyone needs to be pushing in the same direction. Like I said, I have a foot on both sides. I'd love to stop being treated like Al Capone in California. Fair enough. And I think that's a great, response to that. And he's right. That's by way of the Farm Bill, fortunately or unfortunately. Go ahead.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Well, but don't we already have guardrails of what they're supposed to be producing and what the definition of hemp is?
Yeah, I hear you.
Isn't that 0.3% THC? That's my only point. I just would like an answer to that.
Yeah. Much love, guys. Thank you for letting me chime in. And listen, Brian, I appreciate it too. But THCA is what his response was to that. THCA, I think I'm understanding that correctly. What he means by that. Brian writes, Anthony's dryer is done.
I think that was mine. Actually, that was actually mine.
No, that was mine. My cleaning ladies are coming here right
now too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian.
But I don't understand THCA. But
no, I don't either. But hopefully we get another comment. Listen, I know you always have your foot on the ground in Washington, D.C. Have you been there recently? Any feedback that you can provide on what you're seeing, hearing, any rumors, or you just want to maybe pass that question? All right, we'll leave it at that. I see his work.
0.3% Delta 9. Yes, thank you.
All right.
All the products being sold are not that. But as far as DC goes, I would say that as you continue to see Terry Cole, who is the nominee for DEH administrator, I would pay close attention to the questions asked in his hearings about the nomination. I know Terry Cole. I know we did a segment on that based on his involvement in medical cannabis in Virginia through the CCA. I think it's very clear based on and I concur with Eric that they are looking for yes people in the administration, and I think Terry Cole would fit that mold extremely well.
Yep. Look, we've seen a lot of black market dispensaries getting shut down in New York, and you're starting to see a change. Is this kind of yet another chapter in the cannabis space where we look at, all these smoke shops, unregulated products? Like, this is just all part of the growing process and being educated. But do you think we'll start to see a crackdown on a lot of this the same way we're starting to see illicit black market dispensaries being shut down in markets like New York?
I would be shocked if there weren't raids continuing across Pennsylvania, Virginia, Texas, Florida. Pick a state, as people continue to be bad actors.
Yeah,
I don't know what else to say besides that.
yeah. I think
this is not small business. $8 billion was sold in Texas. There is only we run a $270 million business, and I know the platform that we have to support that business.
Yeah.
Small mom and pops can't do that. Like, that's just reality. And so whoever is running the distribution of $8 billion at retail, so let's call that $4 billion, maybe a little bit less, $3 billion, because they're getting an insane markup. They're sophisticated folks. You can call it organized crime. You can call it Al Capone. I mean, you can call it Mexican cartels. You can call it the Chinese triad. All the above.
Yeah. All right, sir. Some good takeaways here. A big lead for a Virginia governor, and you think that's heading in the right direction, possibly going live if it were to pass Jan 1, 2027. Pennsylvania looks like it's heading in the right direction too. And a big wide grin when I bring up Washington, D.C., which I know it's been a very challenging week on the macro level, and I know cannabis stocks continue to get hit hard. But it was nice to see. I don't know if you heard some of the interview that we had with Eric, but I thought it was interesting that he actually outlined that it was a good thing that cannabis rescheduling was not on that list of drug policy control, and that we should really understand what that announcement and information was, because it was completely opposite. And I can understand how people can get kind of confused between both topics, but it's complete opposite with what we're trying to achieve with rescheduling and what that actually announcement really meant.
We as investors in the cannabis space have been trained for 3+ years now that all news is bad news, quite frankly. And so, that's not surprising that, retail investors or just any investors, quite frankly, in the space would get very concerned about that, especially when cannabis publications use clickbait titles, and people don't really read the article. That becomes a problem too. So, that's the reality of where we're at right now. I would be remiss to point out that with all the turmoil over the last week, Jushi's up 20.5%.
Yeah.
I know it's not a big number, and we still got a long way to go to get back to where we were.
Yeah.
But I think we have like you said, a lot of shot on goals over the next, through the end of this year. Oh, by the way, we're about to open another store before 420 in Mansfield, Ohio. We're spending money. I've gotten, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from a fundamental perspective, and a lot of momentum, specific to our business.
I was speaking, some of the first few interviews that I had with Jim last month turned out really well. We had a few institutional investors that we were in Washington with a couple of weeks ago that were very happy and went long on Jushi. And this is not investment advice, but look, you got some great story angles. And I know you guys were quiet behind the scenes over the past year and a half, but rightfully so. But all in all, it looks promising. And I do like the idea that Jim has announced a number of times that he's put his own money backing up his words. So look, we can honestly hope that we get some sort of reform change. But in the meantime, too, there's one last question that Brian just brought up. I think I'm going to pass that one. Don't bring that up.
What is it?
I think that's a good question. Why isn't Jushi in hemp? Are you evaluating hemp?
No comment.
And not THC flower, edibles, beverages.
Because I don't feel like I should be operating as a publicly traded company who has responsibility to my shareholders, who has a lot of their own money into the company, and a lot of our founders have a lot of their own money into this company. chasing the new shiny object, because I'm not a believer that the people of the United States want unregulated THC on every street corner. That's just not the fact. And so we're going to continue to be head down and execute. We still have plenty of growth in our portfolio. We do not need to chase that.
Yeah, well said. And I think you couldn't have framed it any better. But look, great back and forth. Brian Dombrowski, if you're still watching and listening, I really appreciate you logging on here today, and I hope you got some constructive feedback as well. But you know what? Love having people on. And again, we're not haters on both sides. I think we want one common goal, which is regulation with both the hemp industry and cannabis industry. That needs to be communicated time and time again.
We need to have productive conversations so we can all understand how to help move this plant forward towards normalization in the United States, period.
Yep.
That's my end goal, period.
Sounds like Anthony and I should be moderating some events. What do you think? Get about 500 people in the room from both sides, but
don't get 500 people. You'll just get screaming matches. But yeah. I mean, I do think it would be very educational to have a conversation about it. But you have to have the right people.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there's a lot of bad actors in every industry, and so we got to continue to keep telling the truth, especially on something so demonized as cannabis over the last 80 plus years.
Yeah.
Well, this interview took a turn, but I think for the better. And it wasn't what I was expecting going in, but we got a lot out of it. And this has been great. But listen, enjoy round 2. And I know you talked about Augusta being your bucket list. And don't think that, I don't know if you've been to the ballpark in Pittsburgh, but I know the Pirates aren't great. But man, oh man, that is probably the most underrated ballpark in baseball. It is unbelievable there. But if
I'm a Cleveland fan through and through. So anything Pittsburgh, it could go sink into the Three Rivers, and I would
Cleveland fan.
Oh yeah, baby. I'm from Ohio.
The mistake on the lake.
Yes, that's what people refer. Wait until Trump brings back all the jobs, the manufacturing jobs. Cleveland will not be the mistake by the lake anymore. They'll be making all the socks and beach chairs.
What do they call the area in Cleveland now? It used to be called the Locks. I was there last year. I went to game 1 of the ALDS, big Tigers fan. And by the time I sat down from the concession stands at the bottom of the first inning, we were down 5-0. I forget who's that guy. He had unbelievable series against the Tigers, had 2 dingers, but I've never, ever been to, used to be called Jacobs Field. I don't know what it is now, but that is a great ballpark. Unbelievable ballpark. But Detroiter Dan Gilbert has done a lot for that downtown and for the downtown of Detroit too, because he owns the Cavs. But
Dan Gilbert is a very special man.
Yeah. And I know he's gone through some health conditions, but he's been huge for both Cleveland and Detroit, and hope he's doing better. And I think him and Mr. Raznick from Benzenga are pretty good friends as well. But congrats to Jason and his team over at Benzenga. They built quite the model over there. But Trent, always good seeing you and talking to you. And we got Mr. Jim Cacioppo coming up on Monday on the live stream to talk more. So back-to-back Jushi here on a Friday and a Monday. But tell the team we say hi, and let's keep in touch, okay?
Will do. Thanks, Chad.
All right.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
Yep. Take care.
All right. Cooperates. I saw
this Cody guy in the comments is cracking me up. Yes, dude, we know what solventless is, whether it's ice water hash, full melt rosin, like know a lot about cannabis, not just sitting up here talking out of our asses.
Cody Packer.
I've also not seen any dispensaries that have a 70% cap, because there's not that in Florida in our medical market. So I'm not sure where you are.
Brian Cook writes, even though the hemp industry got the ball rolling with the Farm Bill, the stores that sell the hemp are the bad actors because of the loophole. They are organized crime. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want anybody knocking on my door, but at the end of the day, let's just get a regulated market on both sides of the equation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why we're here.
That's all we want. It's easy. Just regulate THC in a common sense manner. Everybody wins. I do
think that, look, you brought it to my attention, but that hearing in Texas, I think, could be the turning point as to what's going on, because that's really produced a lot of attention towards the current state And as you see some of these drug policies that the Trump administration announced, border, fentanyl, all these sort of things, and the people that he's got in place with his cabinet, it's going to be law and order. And you would think that even on the state level, I know that's the federal level, but that's going to be echoed down amongst many people within certain states, and could be the turning point, as I said, for the industry as to what was happening and developing in Texas over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
All right, that wraps things up. As I said, Mr. Michael Bronstein will be back with us for our weekly segment Monday afternoon, along with Jim Cacioppo, CEO of Jushi Holdings. Lots of things that we're going to touch on. What else we got lined up for next week? Next Wednesday.
Jim Higdon from Cornbread Hemp's coming on Wednesday.
That's right. Jim Higdon will be on. And Seth Yakutin. I know a lot of people reach out to us. They love Seth. Seth is going to be on next Friday at 11 a.m. So we've already got a lot of our guests confirmed next week, but the whole idea here today is what we're trying to talk about is to get on some really good thought leaders and kind of like break through the noise and, all the stuff that has been worrying people this week and give you kind of a better insight as to how we should expect or manage expectations on a number of key concerns and topics in this industry moving forward. And I think we got a lot of that here today, but we're just over the hour mark. Holy cow, this has flown. But listen, you enjoy the rest of your day and weekend. And make sure to scan that QR code, people. Get some takeaways from us on what we think of the week that was just had here by becoming a baked-in newsletter subscriber by scanning that QR code delivered to your inbox weekdays, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern time. And a reminder, log on Sunday at 4. We're going to have a quick recap of the week, as I usually do, running down the biggest moments in cannabis for this week, the week of April the 7th. Enjoy the rest of your day and weekend, everyone. We'll see you back here Monday at 4.
Thanks, everybody.
Now, that was a good one. What'd you guys all think? Did you like what we had to say here today? Do you agree, disagree with what we're saying? Love to get your feedback. As usual, leave comments below. Trade to Black is growing, and we wouldn't have done it without you. So if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check us out on Apple and Spotify for the audio version. And as usual, leave lots of comments. We, as I said, love to hear back from you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.